Hello everyone, this is Epic Tabletop and I am Birdish, and here we strive to give you the best hobby experience. Now, so if you're watching this, I would assume that you watched my latest battle report from the world of Warhammer, specifically from the world of two video games, very old video games, namely Shadow of the Horned Rat and Dark Omen. Today I'll be talking about those two scenarios. The battle reports that I made, they are tightly connected with the mentioned universe. It will be mostly about miniatures and models. I will talk also about the possibility of sponsoring me on a Buy Me a Coffee portal, and about the campaign. Please listen about the campaign. Now, one last thing before we start is that I'm referencing here quite a few products like miniatures and the pieces of terrain, and I am in no way affiliated with any of those creators. I was not paid, to make a commercial of any sort. I bought these things with my own money, and I'm just referencing them because I think these are nice things. Well, there's one exception. The exception is the Bretonians. I received those as a part of deal that I made, that I'm getting some miniatures and I'll be reviewing them. Axia miniatures, Tales of the Old World, but still I was under no obligation, to prize those miniatures. Okay, so now let's just start with the material.
Please remember that if you are interested in a particular part of the material, you can use progress bar and timestamps visible there to jump to any video chapter that you desire. Also, if you like what you see and hear, please remember to subscribe. It costs only a few seconds of your time and means a world to me.
Now about the crafting/painting part. So, after I bought the miniatures, I printed them, obviously. And then off to painting. Lieutenant Shepke Infantry and Commander Bernhard Cavalry are kind of similar, except for the horses, of course. Lots of metal plates and chainmails. I have painted those with metallic paints using some washes and highlights in a later stage. Fabric and horses were painted in my usual way with 3 colors: shade, main color and highlight. Copper Fletcher crossbowmen I did a bit differently. Since there is hardly any metal on them, I basically went with slapjob. As a start, I hardly ever leave slapjob as it is. I simply use it as a basis for further highlighting. Here you can clearly see a difference between just a slapjob and a slapjob with some additional highlights. Now the dwarves for the rescue Ilmarin scenario. I was unsure at first as how to and with what kit to portray Hakon the Skull Splitter and his warriors. I don't really like all that much current GW dwarven skulls. These are fine dwarves, but they are not very Warhammer-ish for me. It's like my friends once said, if it has knees, it is not a Warhammer dwarf. I share the sentiment. This attitude allowed me to recall that years ago I bought some plastic dwarfs from 6th edition, and these are fine, but among them I found some monopose old plastic 4th edition dwarfs, and straight away I knew this is the way to portray Hakon and his warriors from 1995 video game. Still, I had 2 problems. I had not enough of these 4th edition warriors. I needed more and something to portray Hakon himself. This seemed like a problem, but actually it was super easy, barely an inconvenience. Problem got solved quite easy, to my surprise. I found 4th edition sculpt or scan on Colt's 3D webpage, and Hakon was made out of some freely available sculpt I found on Thingiverse. The most important thing was for him, Hakon to have this lovely winged helmet. Dwarves got painted to resemble the unit from the game, and I must say I love the way they look. Since then, I have acquired 3D files to make a whole army of stupid dwarves that will look like it's the 4th edition again. You know, no knees and everything. Please let me know in the comments if you would like me to create such an army. I mean print, build and paint. As for the additional units that were part of the ravine battle, first of all, the wizard. I found this guy in one of my many not-so-secret stashes. He was in a very poor state. I repainted him to a decent standard and I'm quite happy with the end result. City arquebusiers are from creator Eramir Orlands. You can find his work on my mini factory. Sadly, his historically oriented ranges of 28 minis are gone for reasons unknown to me. Shame, these minis were quite good for Renaissance, historical period and awesome for Warhammer. Their proportions make them fit with the GW minis nicely. You will witness more of these on my channel on many more occasions, I'm sure. Paint job on these guys is slap job, followed by 2-stage highlight. And the Bretonians. There is a material about these minis on my channel. All of them are from Axia Tales of the Old World company and I love them dearly. I love the fact that I was able to create a sort of ragtag band of various minis. I mean, there are knights, bowmen, billmen, dog handlers and some surgeons. I will be definitively pushing this unit up to 20 men in the future. They were painted using absolutely spectacular Army Painter triage system. Army Painter is all I ever dreamt of in terms of shading and highlighting system. And I mean that especially when you are painting armies and want some sort of uniform look that you can easily recreate over and over. If you like to see more on the subject of me using Army Painter Fanatic paints, please watch my orc painting video. All the mentioned materials are linked in the description below this video. Anyway, so I had the minis, still I needed some terrain. Of course there were quite a few pieces of terrain needed, but I will talk about the most prominent ones that were very important and are somewhat ingenious creations. First, the rocks. It is a truly brilliant design. I mean, they are quite pretty and everything, but the secret lies in the fact that you can connect them into a never-ending seamless rock face, or create rocky labyrinth of different scattered rock formations. In the collection there are also pieces with only faces, so you can edge your gaming table beautifully. When I saw these I knew I need to have them. At that time I solely had in mind Shadow of the Horned Rat scenario, but since then I use them almost constantly. Well, someone can say that similar rocks you can create with knife and some styrofoam. Well, yeah, I suppose. If you have time, space and patience, it can be done. For me there is also another factor. I produce a lot of terrain and I tend to store it any way I can, so durability is a very important thing for me. And PLA prints are very hard to damage, almost indestructible. Unless you expose them to prolonged heat, that is. Other than that, they are very sturdy. Now, printing is one thing, painting quite another. I'll tell you the story because I think I found not a bad way to make those look pretty good with little effort. Although at one point it seems like the whole thing will be a spectacular failure. So, while painting 3D printed terrain such as these rocks, you may go for simplest way and it will be okay. I mean spraying with some grey paint, dry brushing with some whitish color and then maybe some wash and more dry brushing. It will be quite nice and serviceable. It is worth noting that these techniques will make print stitches, if you know what I mean, more visible, especially dry brushing. So I wanted to do something slightly different. I decided to try leopard spots technique. I know, sounds silly since these techniques works great but on molds made out of some sort of gypsum/plaster related products. PLA 3D print seems like hardly a good material to work with this method. Nevertheless, I decided to try, so I made some thin washes out of some cheap craft paints and after priming test model grey, I washed it generously with 3 colors. and then, when those were dry, I'll wash the whole thing with similar black wash. Then some dry brushing, but only on the edges where the rocks were most vulnerable to corrosion, and to my surprise it did look quite good. So I decided to repeat the exercise on a big scale. Since whole thing went so smoothly, I didn't bother to take notes of any kind considering ratio of paint to water, how dense or thin the washes should be. And the whole thing failed. I just couldn't get the washes correct. Either they left no marks on the plastic PLA rocks, or in the best case scenario some ugly spots was the only result. After a few tries I was ready to give up. In the end I decided to sleep on it. And indeed I had an idea. I decided to try and use pigment powders to discolor some of the rock faces. Using a brush, I simply rub pigments in some spot. I used 2 brown shades and 1 grey, lighter than the rocks themselves. At first the effect was a little too abrupt, but after spraying everything with matte varnish, the rocks started to look rather nicely. So, if you want to try something alternative to dry brushing and washing, this might be a good method. Myself, I will certainly use it again for various stone projects. The other key feature was of course the ravine in the latest battle report. Again, when I saw this project, I fell in love with the idea. Unlike the rocks I needed for existing scenario, here I decided to invent a scenario so that the key element in it was this ravine. Ravine is a 3D print. Of course, each fragment consists of 3 pieces that you assemble. In order to use it, you need to have a table that you can split in 2. Truly marvelous idea that brings that 3D feel to your tabletop. The design and STL files are by Devious Games. They do have quite a few other nice projects and you can find them on Drive-Thru RPG portal. Check out the ravine because in fact there is much more to this design that you could see in my battle report. When it comes to preparing the ravine for the battle, the whole process was much simpler than with the rocks. Unfortunately, I lost my footage concerning first steps of the process, therefore I will describe it to you. First I primed everything with dark brown rattle can paint. Then I gave it a light dusting of a grey can paint, spraying from a very shallow angle. And then, as you can see here, I dry brushed edges with lighter grey and then with some white. The effect looked like this. Honestly, it would not be terrible to just leave it like this, but I decided to add some dirt in order to connect it better with my table. For that purpose I used tile grout mixed with earth. I painted some watered down PVA glue in patches big and small, and then I sprinkled it with mentioned earthy mix. And the result? I wanted to add also some grass and vegetation, but I couldn't decide on how to proceed with that idea, so I left it for now. Most probably I will return to it at some point to add some green to the whole mix. And there you have it, these were key components of those 2 battle scenarios. Now please hear me out. Few words about Patronage with Buy Me a Coffee portal. I would like to create this rich, film-like battle reports that you have enjoyed, I hope. For me, it's like illustrating what's in our heads as we play at our tables. I mean, even when we play on not-so-idea table and with maybe armies that are not fully painted, the battle that happens in our heads simultaneously with the dice being rolled is colorful, vivid, and full of special effects, right? And this is what I'm trying to visualize with my every battle report. After all, we paint our miniatures and dress our tables to the best of our efforts to make the whole experience more visually pleasing, but also to make it closer to reality. Reality being a fantasy or historical, no matter. But still, the main thing is their hobby for me. I mean, painting miniatures and playing battles with them. So, for some time now, I'm having a trouble to justify the purchases I'm making. Justify them to myself. I mean, as you can imagine, to create battle reports, you need some hardware like cameras and additional lights, and software to put footage together. But in order to achieve the effect I'm aiming for, I need more, like various special effects, templates, camera tripods and dollies, voice changers, AI animation tools, to name a few. As you can imagine, those things are not necessary in order for me to enjoy miniatures painting and gaming. In fact, they are taking away resources I could put towards new armies and time I could spend painting these armies. Therefore, I'm asking you to consider helping me, if you can, to bear the burden of things I just mentioned. You can do this with the help of Buy Me a Coffee portal. For starters, everyone who decides to sponsor me with Buy Me a Coffee will be able to vote for the course of action in the ongoing Shadows and Omens campaign. And with that, we smoothly move on to a few things I wanted to tell you about the aforementioned campaign. I assume that you have watched the first battle, the Ravine. The next thing to happen is for Morgan Bernhard force reinforced with a sudden appearance of Ragnar wolves to break through encroaching from the east Greenskins' hordes. What happens after that is up to you. The Grudgebringer force will be at the crossroads, literally and figuratively. They can go left, riding hard for the city, or right, stopping at their camp to pick up some things, let's just say. I will reveal to you that if your army goes left, they will still encounter some unexpected allies along the way. Also, going down one path or another will result in a very different situation in the city once the Grudgebringer army arrives. You should also consider that while going to the left will be much faster, you won't be able to replenish your losses suffered in the Ravine scenario and the Crossroads scenario. While going to the right will lead you to your camp where surely Grudgebringers can rest, this will delay your arrival to the city and will give more time to Greenskins to organize their assault. This choice, like I mentioned, will be available as voting system for everyone who decides to help me through Buy Me a Coffee Patronage. So, that's it for now. On the next video, we will check what sort of losses Grudgebringers suffered in the Ravine scenario, and we'll see if twin brothers leading the Bretonnians lived after suffering potential deadly wounds from trolls. Thank you so much for watching, and till next time.